I think. I think it's. I think it's on. Hello. Remember me? Oh, guys, I had no idea it was going to be such a long hiatus. And I'm sorry for that. I've never taken such a lengthy time off from doing my program, and it feels very odd. And I do want to say that, unsurprisingly, I have encountered technical difficulties, and I'm unable to hook us into Zoom, which is how I take phone calls. I think otherwise we should be okay. I'm hoping. I will wait to hear from you to let me know that you are hearing me. Because, oh, Milton, thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you. I know you can hear me. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, it's good to be back. It truly is. I want so desperately to reclaim a semblance of my normal existence, because things have not been normal since last we spoke. It's been what? I don't even know. At least 6 weeks, maybe 7. And in the interim, a lot of stuff has happened. Some of it good, some of it challenging, some of it awful, and here I am. I don't know how. I think most of you know that my mother, my wondrous mother, passed away 2 weeks ago, and I am so grateful to have had her in my life as long as I did. Me and my siblings. Most people are orphaned a lot younger than I. So I just wanted to say that was, well, it remains pretty awful. Maybe later, if I have inclination, I'll share some of my thoughts about her. She was a wondrous being, truly, and lived to be 103 and then some. And yeah. And I also lost my knee. I got a new one of those, and it's functioning, I guess, pretty well. And although I'm now in that dreaded phase after such surgeries, known as rehab, and that is brutal. Yeah. I actually felt better before I started rehab. I was in less pain. But now, yiko. But it's odd how my entire lower leg is numb because they cut a bunch of nerves and stuff when they do that surgery. It's numb, and yet it is capable of feeling pain. What the hell's that about? You would think if your leg goes numb from nerves being severed, that a plus of that might be that you don't feel pain. No, quite the opposite. It's numb and in pain. Son of a bitch. So, I remember once when I took a bit of a longer time off, maybe 2-3 weeks. I started the show by saying, so anything happened while I was gone, and that's always a sure laugh because we live in, pick your adjective, tumultuous, terrifying, whatever, certainly not dull times. And one of the joys of being, bedridden and hospitalized and all of that for a while is that I did sort of tune out. But there really is no tuning out in Donald Trump's America. It seeps in nonetheless. And I did find myself, taking a note here and there of, oh, wow, good God, I've got to, talk about that. And it's just astonishing how, looking back at these notes from just 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, it seems like an eternity. So much, but we've talked about this before, how he floods the zone to keep us in a state of destabilization and paralyzation, right? Just, you don't even know what, as soon as you want to react to something, something else comes in. We've learned his tricks, his MO, and maybe are less inclined to, I don't know. I think his MO is devastating. So I don't know where to start. I'm glad he's out of the fucking country, embarrassing himself in Asia, embarrassing us in Asia. I hate that such a vile being rose to the stature he possesses, and nothing is more humiliating to me than that, because we the people did that. Just astonishing. I don't know how, you hold your head up. Oh. So I remember one of the things that happened way, way, way back 6 weeks ago or something was Charlie Kirk. Remember him? Now, I have to tell you, that was, boy, was I glad I wasn't doing a show. I have to tell you, I was really glad. That someone who, first of all, most of us knew next to nothing about, if anything, would be elevated. Where did I see? I do have to share one quote with you, because it's simply beyond. It beggars belief, I think, is the phrase I'm looking for. And I think this was later when the President of the United States was honoring the martyred Charlie Kirk. He referred to him as akin to, again, you can't make this up. I did a double take, a triple take, who knows what. But he compared him, of course I'm not going to find it, he compared him to, here it is maybe, Socrates. Let me see if I can, is that true? Yeah, Socrates. Not that Donald Trump knows who Socrates was. But he put him in a pantheon of Socrates, Saint Peter, Abraham Lincoln, and Martin Luther King. Again, it's difficult living in a time when that statement can be made, and then if you raise a objection to it, you are potentially placing yourself in danger of what? Losing your job, of being trolled and or terrified. Here, I finally found the quote. Charlie Kirk, the president said, was a martyr for truth and for freedom, from Socrates and St. Peter, from Abraham Lincoln to Martin Luther King. Those who change history have always risked their lives for causes they were put on earth to defend. When a statement like that can be made about a man who, after his death, we learned finally a lot about and saw some of what he had said in his past, and that a man who said, Martin Luther King was awful. He's not a good person. He said one good thing that he actually didn't even believe. Yeah, that's Charlie Kirk. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. We made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act. Yeah, I can see why somebody who said all those kinds of things would be lauded as a latter-day Socrates, Abraham Lincoln, and Dr. King. Good God. But he is their martyr. So I was glad I missed all of that, the horrific funeral, the unbelievable, crazed statements of Stephen Miller, who I find to be, of all of them, perhaps the most loathsome. You know how a dog, like a Doberman Pinscher, is it Pinscher or Pinscher, who bumps into a Chihuahua, immediately recognizes the Chihuahua as another dog, even though, I mean, come on, they don't look at all alike. Yeah, they got 4 legs and stuff and tails, but so do a ton of other animals. And I was thinking how dogs are, and I believe it's true, the most the species that has the most I don't know what they're called, derivations. They can look so different one from the other, and yet a dog immediately knows another dog. I bring this up only to say that I cannot recognize Stephen Miller and a bunch of others as humans. I know we humans aren't giving to, smelling certain parts of others' anatomy to get a sense of who you are, but we do know each other. Usually, we can identify. I cannot identify them as human, or I don't want to. I happened upon a Teddy Roosevelt quote. He was a Republican. I just want to put this out there. Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. I say that because once Republicans were not insane. Once Republicans could hold the office of President of the United States and not humiliate, embarrass, and denigrate us and the office. But I saw this Teddy Roosevelt quote, and I think it was after Trump made some remark about how anybody who says anything negative about me is like committing a crime. He said something like that. So somebody dug up this Teddy Roosevelt quote, which I want to share with you to remind you that well over 100 years ago, our country was not as woefully led and as frighteningly lost. Teddy Roosevelt said, "To announce that there must be no criticism of the president, or that we are to stand by the president, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but is morally treasonable." Wow. Yes. Yeah. So one of the other things that happened not too long after last I did this program, Donald Trump showed up at the United Nations. Remember that one? Remember the humiliation and embarrassment of that display? And you know, again, I saw a quote from an unnamed, in times of fear and fascism, a lot of things are unnamed for self-preservation purposes, especially when you have in power these purported human beings who are simply seekers of revenge. So it was said that after Trump gave his meandering, insane speech at the United Nations that went, 4 to 5 times longer than his allotted time, a senior diplomat told one of our folks, "This man is stark raving mad." Do Americans not see it? Well, some of us do. The terrifying part is millions upon millions of us don't. This man is stark raving mad. Another depiction of Trump that I saw during my hiatus, I do have to share with you. It's from some British writer, and I'm not exactly clear who he is. I'm going to find this for you because it's so brutally wondrous. Here it is. It's by a guy named Oliver Kornetsky. Okay, you ready for this? Behold the festering carcass of American rot. I think this was after the UN speech. That's what set this guy off. Behold the festering carcass of American rot, shoved into an ill-fitting suit. The sleaze of a con man, the cowardice of a draft dodger, the gluttony of a parasite, the racism of a Klansman, the sexism of a back alley creep, the ignorance of a barstool drunk, all spray-painted orange and paraded like a prize hog at a county fair. Not a president, not even a man, just the diseased distillation of everything America swears it isn't, but has always been. Arrogance dressed up as exceptionalism. Stupidity passed off as common sense. Cruelty sold as toughness. Greed exalted as ambition, and corruption worshipped like gospel. He is America's shadow made flesh, a rotting pumpkin idol, proving that when a nation kneels before money, power, and spite, it doesn't just lose its soul. It vomits up this bloated obscenity and calls it a leader. Wow. Wow. Festering carcass of American rot. War-ravaged Portland. You know, guys, I'm just looking at the notes I was taking while I was gone, mending, and I'm God. Supreme Court is poised to strike down what's left of the Voting Rights Act, which is to say that they're going to say that you can't use race in figuring out how to draw congressional districts, which is to say that southern states are going to redraw, as they are doing, their maps now legally to prevent black people people's votes counting as much as white folks' votes. And with the help of AI and computers, man, this can be done with laser-like precision. Incredible. Are there I'm jumping all over the place here because, again, I'm looking at these scraps of all this stuff I wasn't able to talk to you about. And I'm sorry I cannot take calls today because I don't know what the hell It's amazing I got on as much as I'm on. You know what? I just pulled the front page of the New York Times from this Wednesday, and it is a depiction of the reality of the corruption and destruction being wrought on a daily basis by this administration. And that just Wednesday, so less than a week ago, the front page had a story, a picture of the East Wing of the White House. Some of it still standing. We know that that is no longer the case. And again, I mean, a million people have said it, that it's such an extraordinarily on-point visual metaphor for this presidency. The wanton, blatant destruction of our government, of our institutions, in this case of a piece of American real estate and history that supposedly does not belong to the people who might inhabit it at any given time, but rather belongs to you and me. He bulldozed it. I don't know that, you know, all the things that we viscerally react to, that he creates or says, does. I mean, this one, for some reason, just sickened me. The total disregard. It's all there. The total disregard for doing things properly. It is conceivable that he could have gone through channels and legally and by the book taken down part of the White House. But rules, as we know, don't apply to him. And when I think of, I mean, it's not just the East Wing. It's clearly the guy's not planning on going anywhere. He's making that beautiful national historic address, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He is making it into the classless horror show that is Mar-a-Lago. My God, ripping up old historic trees that were planted to honor past presidents, paving over the rose garden, ripping up Jackie Kennedy's rose bushes and garden. It's I'm sorry. You know, he's harming us in so many ways, and one of the ways he's harming us, I can feel it in my gut right now, is he brings out the worst in all of us. I say that because I was just feeling true hatred for him. And that's not, you know, that hatred is not something that is good for the soul. It's not good for one's physical health. It's not good for one's mental health. But he traffics in it quite openly, and he spreads it so that those not even inclined necessarily to be hateful now increasingly are hateful. And right next to that, on this same page, this one day last week, is this story that Trump is saying that he wants the Justice Department to write him a check for about $250 million. The open corruption is mind-blowing. How can it still be mind-blowing? His crypto stuff, his on-the-take stuff, the airplane from the Qatar. What the fuck? You know, you never realize what you got until you don't have it anymore. We didn't appreciate that the people who had held the office of the presidency before him were mostly honorable men. They had their, they weren't perfect. But even looking at, Richard Nixon was an honorable man in comparison to this. Unbelievable. Con man, crook, shyster, soulless, murderous, son of a bitch. And on that same front page, there's a story about the shutdown. Are we, what are we, into a month? I can't imagine how it's going to end. I can't imagine. And he doesn't give a shit. I don't know, guys. I just don't know. So when do you think, looking at some of the stuff that's going on in Chicago, it makes your, it breaks your heart. It breaks your heart. And makes you crazed with fury. The cruelty, the inhumanity. I am buoyed somewhat by the getting to know some of the Democratic office holders, such as Governor Pritzker or the mayor of Chicago, because when they speak, they do speak for me. And in that, I do find a measure of solace. But it's extraordinary. Everything is just extraordinary. So, what's going to happen? You know, he's got election deniers in charge at the federal level of ensuring election integrity in the next round of elections. The deniers are in control of election integrity. Those who have worked mightily and rather successfully to make Americans distrust the vote, the tally, are now in charge of ensuring the tally's efficacy. Good God. So, yeah, he's not intending to leave his new house, his house. He's not intending to. That's quite clear. And he's denuded the military of all of the judge advocates, of all of the folks in oversight who could actually stand up to a general and say that is not legal, like blowing away fishermen. It's astonishing. So we know that the ace in his pocket, which he hasn't pulled yet, but will, is the invocation of the Insurrection Act. He alludes to it quite often. He knows it's there, and it's what he will use to allow him to put troops into America's cities. I mean, he already has. But he will eventually, I'm sure, suggest that things like no king's rallies constitute an insurrection. I am directing the Secretary of War to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland. That is a quote. We're living in a crazy place. We're living in insanity. George Orwell, I mean, God, what would George Orwell, I mean, you want to go back and read some Orwell just to remind yourself of what he presciently saw coming. God Almighty. I don't know. So, can I stop for a minute? Can I tell you a story? Or maybe not. So I had my surgery. It was at Allegheny General Hospital because I avoid the UPMC evil empire as much as I possibly can. And I've gotten really good at it, by the way. So I was at AGH, and I was kept overnight. And when they wheeled me from the recovery room into my room, I was shocked to find it was not a private room. I've been in a lot of hospitals, a lot of times, and I have not had to share a room since I was a child. Never in my adult life did I have a roommate in the hospital. And when I was wheeled in, it's not that I saw the roommate. What I saw was a curtain drawn across, cutting the room in half, and my being deposited in a bed. And I said, so somebody's over there? And the answer was yes. I am by nature a solitary soul. And in times of, whatever, of not being at my best, I really prefer to be alone. And I wasn't. On top of that, it was the same day that the Emmy Award-winning television show, The Pit, was filming at the hospital. Noah Wyle, the Emmy Award-winning star, was there. So the joint was jumping. I had anesthesia still coursing through my body. I had opioids coursing through my body. And I said hello to the person who I couldn't see on the other side of the curtain. And she answered back, hello. And unbelievably, I'd say slowly but steadily, for the next few hours, we spoke. And it was one of the more fascinating experiences of my life, I think, to find myself in what became almost intimate conversation with somebody who was literally feet from me, who I could not see, and who was suffering mightily. She had already been in that room, in that bed, in that room for a week. She had been air flighted to Allegheny General Hospital after a car accident in which a whole bunch of her bones were broken. And she could not move. She was in restraints. I can't imagine the pain she was in. But she was this bright, wonderful woman. And we just, I was so grateful that she was there. And it reminds me of how I, who so often don't want, to reach out, am so wrong about that. That human contact, however truncated it might be, is so precious. And she had other disabilities, she told me, and had struggled to learn how to walk as a child. And she was especially frightened that she would never walk again. things get put in perspective. And I don't know, we eventually, finally, who knows, stopped talking and fell asleep, the two of us. Until in the early morning hours, I awoke with a start. And screamed, "Help!" I'm not a screamer by nature, but I screamed, "Help!" I called her name, "Help!" She woke up. I said, I've fallen out of the bed. "Oh my God," I hear her say, hang on, I'll get help." And I hear her on, summoning a nurse. "She's fallen out of bed." I was in a panic. I'm looking, and the ceiling's where the wall is supposed to be. The wall is where the ceiling's supposed to be. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I done? And then I hear footsteps, running, people coming. Thank God. And they ran into the room. And they ran right by me. Two of them ran right by me over to her half of the room. And I heard her say, no. She fell out of bed. And then I heard the nurse say, "She's in her bed." They'd run past me because I was lying in my bed. I'm racking it up to anesthesia and opioids. And it did explain, while I was thinking I had fallen out of bed, I later thought I was hanging off a cliff, and I was a little shocked that there seemed to be a pillow next on the side of my head. And since I was hanging by I was clutching the bed frame. My knuckles were white. Oh my God. Well, when the nurses left, somewhat miffed, I think, my roommate and I started laughing. And I swear to God, we must have laughed. It was, for her, I think it was a gift. I don't think she'd laughed for a long time. And the next morning, I was informed that I had, that a lot of people were laughing. That the nurses who had come on duty the next morning had certainly heard about that craziness. And down the hall, maybe about 3 rooms down the hall, the whole time, almost, there was a man, old guy, screaming at the top of his lungs, "Get me out of here!" You don't want to go to the hospital if you can help it. I'm just saying. So, can I share with you some of what I said about my mom? It's so much better than talking about our current predicament as Americans. I want to protest that the past tense does not suit her. That she is has now given way to she was. Sticks in my throat. I've been sitting with her in my mind, and in my mind it's 1955, and she sweeps into my bedroom to kiss me goodnight on her way to a cocktail party. Her wonderful perfume precedes her, and I breathe it in as she bends to kiss me goodnight, her emerald green satin dress rustling, her extraordinary beauty making me almost swoon. I've been sitting with her in my mind. And there's another night. She's rousting me out of my warm bed, out of a deep sleep, hustling me down the stairs and out onto the front lawn. It's cold. It's dark. I'm terrified. But she is practically giddy with delight, wanting to share something with me, insisting I look up at something, a comet, the northern lights. I don't remember. I just remember being terrified, looking up with my eyes closed because that huge expanse of stars and sky made me feel so small. She would have been incapable of comprehending my reaction. She was a grabber of life. She with her hungry head, delighting in things as large as the cosmos and things as small as a strand of DNA. I think she would have been a scientist if she'd been born a few generations later. And there's another night I lay in the back of a stranger's car. I'm 6 or 7, and my neck is slashed after riding my bike through a window, and again I'm terrified, and then the car door opens and she slides in beside me. All I remember is her beautiful, radiant smile as she looks at me, her bloodied child, and says, "Oh boy, now you've done it." And I felt so safe. I feel less safe now. I think I published her obituary on Facebook, the obituary I wrote. She was something. She came to me once. I must have been in my 30s. She said, "This Chinese girl I'm tutoring wants me to come with her back to China. Her whole family is going back to China. They want me to come. Will you come with me?" And I, her stick-in-the-mud daughter, said, "No, I don't wanna." Her husband said, "No, I don't wanna." We were always the ones who said no, and it never kept her from going. So she went and spent 2 weeks on a tour bus in China with a bunch of Chinese people, all of them speaking Chinese. And she had a ball. And they treated her with the reverence due an older woman. I'll read just the last paragraphs to you. I now reluctantly bring up Nancy Reagan. I said at my mom's funeral. I now reluctantly bring up Nancy Reagan to make a point. Nancy Reagan famously said, "Just say no." My mother, Shirley Miller, had a mantra. Quite the opposite. Always say yes. Not many mothers say that to their daughters. Always say yes. But my mother told me, always say yes. It's the only way things ever happen in your life. Always say yes to the smallest invitation. She said yes to a big invitation in 1943 when a guy from Green Bay, Norman Miller, asked her to be his wife. And their extraordinary love, a melding of two people who were opposites in so many ways, endured for 65 years. She was a joyful, happy, playful, eternally young woman, and he, a melancholy, serious man, who even in the bar mitzvah picture taken of him at 13 looked like a troubled 40-year-old businessman. But they fit like a glove. And he was besotted by her until his dying day. And on her dying day, October 11th, 2025, Shirley Miller, daughter of a dentist, proudly had all her teeth, most of her marbles, and of course, as always, her astonishing, ageless beauty. We will bury her next to the first man she ever kissed, the love of her life, my wonderful dad, Norman Miller. Thank you for letting me share her and honor her one more time. I was awfully lucky. Well, I'm back, for better or for worse, and I'll try to get back into the swim. Susan should be joining us tomorrow, and we'll get back into the resistance. Yeah? The resistance. Never stop resisting.